Look how awesome this tank is. Look how amazing the fish are. I gotta be completely transparent with you and confess to something. This is something that is gonna absolutely blow your mind, and you're not gonna believe me when I tell you. And if you're someone that's on the fence as to whether or not you wanna start a saltwater tank, you're thinking, saltwater tanks are too much, they're too involved, I don't wanna get into all of that, this might change your mind. This 240-gallon saltwater aquarium from Planet Aquariums was set up in here in early February. Sean Hale and Evie and Jimmy from Fritz, they all came out here. They helped Lisa and I set this up as what is the first saltwater aquarium in the Old Fish House. And they told me something then that I took very seriously. They said, hey, listen, John, we're putting Turbo Start in here. We're getting the thing going. Just leave it alone. Don't do anything with this aquarium for at least a month. Don't do any water changes. Don't do any maintenance at all. Just let it do its thing. Now, they did say if there's some kind of an emergency or something like that, obviously you don't want to leave it alone. You need to react. But if everything's okay, let it go for a month without touching it. I was a little nervous about that, but I said, hey, they're the pros. So for the first month of this tank's existence, I followed exactly what they told me. I didn't mess with it. I just enjoyed it. I stared at it. I fed the fish. I like to feed Gizmo by hand. It's so much fun. Gizmo is my spiky burrfish that likes to eat krill out of my hands, and I absolutely love that. We have a special bond. But this tank has just been a joy, and we get to that 1 month mark. I was testing the water every few days, and at the 1 month mark, everything was fine. So I said, you know what? I am someone who preaches, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I kept leaving it alone. Another month goes by. Still, everything is checking out perfectly fine. Testing it every few days. And then another month goes by, and still everything's fine. And last week I was like, you know what? I don't know. I feel like I need to do something. I don't know. It's making me nervous. Everything's fine, but I feel like I need to do something. And I said, you know what? The last thing I want to do with this tank, with the fish being healthy, they're happy, they're growing, everything's great, they're eating perfectly fine. The last thing I need to do is anything that could possibly screw that up. So once again, I left it alone. So now here we are. It's the end of May. This tank was set up in early February, and I haven't touched it. I have not done a single bit of maintenance on this tank. The only thing I've done, which had to be done, was topping off the sump with RO water. Water evaporates in every aquarium out there. When the water evaporates from the sump, you can have problems. The pump can burn up, and it's just not going to operate properly. You're going to cost yourself a lot of money. So you top it off, just like you would any other aquarium, except you top it off in the sump. I topped it off with RO water, something you may not know. I found this out like 7 or 8 years ago, and I was actually surprised by it. When you top off water in a saltwater aquarium, you do not use salt water to top it off. You just use straight up water, RO water. And the reason for that, salt doesn't evaporate. So the salt is still there. It's just the water that evaporated. So all you have to do is replenish that water and everything's good. And I'd say it's probably once a week that I'll top it off. The sump is down here. It might even need to be topped off now. But you can see, yeah, the line is pretty low. The line's down here. Yeah, you can see it. The line's down here. It's supposed to be up here. So it's time for a top off. But other than that, I have not done a single water change or anything. All I've done is wipe the algae off the glass and top it off. This has been the easiest aquarium I've ever had. Yeah, you can make the argument, and you wouldn't be wrong, that, well, John, this is a really expensive, very fancy, very elaborate system. You'd be right if you said that. It's true. This is a high-end saltwater system. Now, for some of you reefers out there that are watching this, you're like, what are you talking about? I would still spend another 12 grand on gizmos and gadgets to go on that. Okay, touche, that's fine. But when it comes to a Fowler tank, a fish only with live rock, this is a fancy system. I mean, it just is. I'm very fortunate to have people like Planet Aquariums and CJ and Fritz and Carib Sea and everybody that worked with us on this project. I know how lucky I am, and they gave me a great system. And a lot of why this has been so easy for me is probably because of the system. But I still think it's absolutely incredible that you can set up a system like this. You can be so scared of saltwater. Everybody's scared of saltwater. It's so different. It's this wild frontier that we've never explored. But what I'm here to tell you is, you don't have to worry about that. It's not as complicated as you might think. When you have a tank like this, you're practicing keeping clean water in a glass box, just like you would be with that tank or any of the other tanks in here. It's just a little bit different procedure when it comes to making the water to put back in there. But here's the thing, I haven't had to do that since we set it up. And I think I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me explain. Carl's up there sleeping. We leave the ladder here so he can get down and not jump on the tanks to get down. Carl, I have to move your ladder for a minute. We also have this tank sitting here that we haven't found a place for yet. Got to find somewhere to put it. Eventually we will. I told you a few days ago, this place is always turned upside down. So let's talk about the process that is getting water ready for a saltwater aquarium. And while we talk about this, understand that a lot of this is going to also apply to freshwater keepers, because we all have heard about RO water too, haven't we? And we're like, do I need that for my aquarium? Well, I'm going to answer that in here. What is RO water? Reverse osmosis water. What is it? Well, it involves that fancy contraption right there that was sent to us by DFW Aquarium Supply with the whole saltwater system. Why? Because every single saltwater fish keeper will tell you, you have to use RO water for these aquariums. I don't ask questions. People say you have to do it. I say, okay, that's what I'm going to do it. I've never heard anyone ever in the entire existence of me being in this hobby say, you don't have to worry about that with a saltwater tank. Just put any old water in there. It's going to be fine. No, everybody always and always has said, you need RO water for your saltwater tank. So what this is, it's a system where the water, it hooks up to your water system in your house, and the water is pushed through these 3 filter chambers. What goes on in those filter chambers? I have no idea, but what comes out the other end is completely purified water. It is water that has all of the minerals and all of the junk in it gone, and it comes out perfectly pure. It is reverse osmosis water, which is safe to put into your saltwater tank. Again, for top-offs. If the water evaporates, you're going to replace it. You use RO water and not salt water. The only time you have to add salt water is if you're doing a water change. You're pulling water out, putting new water in. That's when you would mix it up with the salt. But if you're just topping off, RO water is good to go. What about freshwater aquariums? If you're a freshwater fish keeper, do you need a system like this? Sometimes. It depends on who you are, it depends on what your situation is, and it depends on what you're doing. This is just me being honest, if I did not have the saltwater tank, I would not have this. Why? Because I would have no use for it. The water that comes out of our tap here is perfectly fine for our freshwater tanks, so I wouldn't worry about it. But if your water is not, you might need it. Or there are certain fish that if you want to breed these fish, and some of them, even if you just want to keep them, you really are kind of strictly needing RO water to put into those tanks. When you do your research on your fish, you'll find out if you need it or not. So for people like that are breeding these rare, hard to breed species, they may need RO water to facilitate breeding. But if you're just a regular old fish keeper like I am, and your water out of your tap is fine, then you don't need to worry about all of this. But here's the thing, if you have determined because you're keeping salt water or you're trying to breed that rare fish that you need RO water, there's something that you have to think about before you take the plunge to go get that system. You have to have somewhere to store that RO water. It doesn't come out of the tap of the RO system and you just fill your tank up with it. It drips and it's very, very slow. Now, if you're gonna go out there and spend $300,000 on a big industrial RO system, you can get it to come out like a fire hose. But for us mere mortals that are setting one up in our fish room, it literally just drips out. So you're not gonna put that in your tank and do a water change with it. You have to have somewhere to store that water. And what we've done is we've come up with this super fancy system here. And let me show you. The RO system is hooked up to our water line back there. I don't know if you can see it. Let me put it up there close so that you can see that, where it is connected to the plumbing in the building. This was very easy to do because we have the PEX plumbing pipes in here, so I didn't have to solder or do anything like that. It was very, very simple. It took me like 5 minutes to do. Once I hooked that up, that runs to the RO system through this the black pipe, which goes into this end over here. The black pipe from the plumbing goes into here. It goes through the whole system, and then the good, clean RO water comes out of this blue hose, and we just have it running down into this stock tank. Now, the system isn't turned on, so there's nothing coming out of it, but I was going to turn it on for you, but then I'm going to have to turn it right back off. Why would I do that? So this was set up just for getting the saltwater system up and running. We needed a lot of water to fill up that tank, 240 gallons plus the sump. So we had that full, along with 2 or 3 of the large brute trash cans full of RO water, which we mixed up and put in there as salt water. So it worked out really, really well. And since I haven't had to do any maintenance to speak of, I've just kind of left the system here. I have RO water that's in there. If I need more, I turn the system on and I get more RO in there, and we're all good. Everything's fine. But it's not fine because this looks terrible. This is a huge stock tank sitting in the floor, taking up space. I need to get rid of that. And today is when I'm going to do that. I have a project that's been hanging over my head for 3 months now, and I am ready to get started on this and show you how I'm going to hook up an RO system that's going to hold 150 gallons of water, and I'm going to have some flexibility to do some things with it that I might want to do. I don't know. So we are back behind the new rack of tanks that I just built. I've got the 2 125s and the 75s. I intentionally pulled those tanks away from the wall. I think it's 36 inches, but I'm not quite sure. And I did that so that I could put these barrels back here. The number one question that's going to come in the comment section of this video: where did I get these barrels? I ordered them from uline.com. They're on there. I think they're like $100 a piece. However, Uline is not a company that's available to just anybody. It's for businesses. This is where we order our boxes and all of that stuff that we use for our business. And this is one of those things that they offer in there. It was Tanner Serpa that told me where he got his, so I am totally copying him, except his are different than mine because mine have the removable lids and his don't. So what my plan is to have all 3 of these hooked up to the RO system so that we will have 3 55-gallon barrels, which will probably only have about 50 gallons in each one. They will be there, ready to go whenever we need them. And the cool thing is, when they're full, the system will automatically shut off. Let me show you how I'm going to do that. So we have this system that is online. It's everywhere. It's very, very cheap. It's like 12 bucks, I think, for each one of these. I bought 3 of them, 1 for each tank. This little kit for like 12 bucks comes with multiple push-on fittings, as well as a valve, and then the float valve itself. So what this does, I'm going to drill a hole through the back of the barrel at whatever height I want the water to be. This is threaded and has a little nut on it, kind of like a bulkhead, if you will. It doesn't really need to seal the water up. We'll talk about that, or when it's all done, I'll show you how it works. But this is going to mount in the barrel. The pipe from the RO system hooks up to this, no problem. At least it's supposed to. We'll figure that out when we get there. But what happens is when the water fills up, this float valve starts to float, it turns it off. So when the first one is full, it's going to turn off and the water will route over to the second one, and so on and so on. We end up with 3 55-gallon drums filled with probably 50 gallons each, float valves on them, everything shuts down. I don't have to worry about it. I can't tell you how many times I've been making RO water and I've just had to manually turn it off, and then you forget, and then you come in and there's 25 gallons of water on the floor. It's happened to me more than once. I am quite ashamed to admit that. We don't have to worry about that with this. Why don't we check in with Lisa? She went to Virginia today to go to a doctor's appointment for our granddaughter, and she said she was going to get some footage of that beautiful baby that I like to call the beautiful little banana. So let's check in on her, and then we'll come back and I'll be ready to show you what I've done here.
Is that a good bottle? Is that a good bottle?
Look at that, all good. In a second.
You're so sweet. You're so sweet. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You're gonna have blue eyes forever. That's awesome.
Bye.
Love you. Bye, baby. Love you. Bye. Mimi will be there for your CT. So this is the rundown as far as what's going on with Izzy. She's 7 weeks old, and when she was about 3 weeks old, her dad, Doug, had felt a knot on her stomach. He was, massaging her stomach and everything, and he felt something off. So they took her to the pediatrician, and that's when the pediatrician decided to do an ultrasound and see what was going on. After that ultrasound, they said she needed to go see a specialist because they weren't sure what was going on. And so she was sent down to Children's Hospital in Richmond, Virginia, and they did another ultrasound. The surgeon said, to be on the safe side, we're not sure what we're dealing with here. They thought it was a mass on her ovary, and they didn't know for sure, what they were looking at. So they sent her for lab work to rule out cancer, and that was definitely something that came back right away as a negative, and we were so happy about that because that was a very scary couple days worrying about that. So the surgeon said, well, let's go ahead and give it a couple more weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, see if it shrinks and goes away on its own, and we'll do another ultrasound. So that's why we're here today, is so that Izzy could have her ultrasound, and she did. She had her 3rd ultrasound, and she was so good. She's so sweet and adorable. So they found that this mass wasn't on her ovary like they originally thought it was. The radiologist came in during the ultrasound, and they were looking at it, and they were trying to move things around so they could see exactly what was going on. And apparently it's attached to her intestine. So what they're gonna do is have her get a CT now with the dye, and they're gonna see exactly what's going on, like if it's attached to the intestine or kind of just in there doing its thing on its own. It's the size of a golf ball. Imagine a golf ball in your baby's belly. So yeah, they want to do that. They said definitely she has to have surgery. Again, not for sure if they're just removing a mass or if they're going to be removing part of her intestine too. So the CT, they said they want to do the CT in 2 to 3 weeks. They want to give her a little bit more time to grow too, because anesthesia and all on a baby. She's only 7 weeks old. So surgery, unless there's like major things going on, like she's not holding food down, vomiting a lot, or she's just in a whole lot of pain, they would like to do surgery in like 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. So that's kind of the time frame right now, as long as, you know, things don't get worse. So yeah, that's what's going on with Izzy, and she's just the sweetest little baby, and I feel so bad for my daughter having to go through this. Her and Doug, this is their first child, their first time being a parent, and they're experiencing this. But you know, Izzy's a trooper. She's doing great. I mean, she's just super awesome. But I just wanted to let you guys know that's what's going on, and yeah, there you go.
So basically the way this works is the water comes in from that small black pipe there, goes into the filtration system here. It's filtered through the 3 canisters. Once the water's filtered, water comes out of 2 different places. There has to be the wastewater, the water that's no good, that has to go somewhere. That comes out of this yellow pipe here. And we just drop it straight into the sink. You can see there's a lot of water coming out of that. But the good water comes through this blue hose and then is sent down into these. Once the water fills up to this level here, it's gonna... Well, that doesn't seem right. I put the float valves in upside down. Yay. Now, where were we? Hey, listen, I never claimed to be an expert on anything, okay? I put these float valves in upside down. So what? It takes 2 minutes to fix them. But now you can see the water is coming out. And when the water gets up to this level, it's going to hit this float valve and boop, it's going to stop it. Now, is a system like this complete overkill? Maybe. I mean, I've been known to overkill the heck out of a lot of things. And in this hobby where we're trying to do what's best for our animals, is there such thing as overkill? I don't think so. It's an expensive way to set all this up. If you want to do something like this and you don't have the demand for that much water, I got a 240 gallon tank. So having a lot of water like this is important to me. If you have a 30 gallon or something like that, you can buy a smaller system and run it into a Brute trash can or something like that. You know, get your 32 gallons out of there, use a float valve to shut it off. You'll have the same system that I do, but on a smaller scale. And it won't cost you an absolute fortune. You might be out a few $100 to set something like this up. But if you're in the saltwater world, what's the alternative? The alternative is going to the fish store with a bunch of empty 5-gallon buckets and purchasing salt water. Is that a big deal? No, it's a great excuse to take a trip to the fish store, but not all fish stores have big giant RO systems and supply salt water, or maybe your closest one is 3 hours away or something like that. I don't know. If you want to have everything and be able to do it all in-house, this is going to be something that you're going to need. So I'm happy with it. I'm thrilled with it. This tank has become an absolute just main thing in my life. I love it so much, and mainly because it's new. I mean, I come out here and I see Gizmo, who absolutely loves me, and he loves when I feed him. Look at him, he's coming up to the tank. He's like an Oscar. He comes up to the tank when he sees me because he knows I'm that blurry thing on the outside of the water that feeds him. I'm gonna try to get this. Gizmo, come on. And there we are. Oh, he's so adorable. I love him so much. The angel, who is changing, by the way, I'm going to have to do a whole update of this tank on this vlog. The angel's starting to change. He's starting to turn yellow. And it's an amazing thing to see. It's almost like every time I see him, he looks a little bit different. Now, if you're not in the saltwater world, you may not be aware. This absolutely stunning fish here with all the circles on him, it's the most beautiful juvenile fish you've ever seen. But as they grow, they completely change the way they look. And they become more of a yellow fish. Those rings become straight line, not straight lines, but more vertical bars. It's so cool. It's one of those fish that you kind of wish it never changed because it's so cool looking when they're juveniles, but they're pretty daggone nice looking when they get to be adults too. So anyway, this tank has been so much fun for me. These fish are so much fun for me. And as I continue to learn more about this side of the hobby, my cat wants me to give him some. He's so spoiled. I will share that knowledge with you. This has been a lot of fun. And I would encourage anyone who is in the freshwater world that's terrified of the saltwater world, give it a shot. Don't be afraid of it. Because if I can do it, anybody can do it. I know that's cliche, but it's absolutely true. If I can do it, you can too. So I'm rambling at this point. Today's episode has been a lot of fun. Lisa is going to be home very soon, and we're going to be making hibachi tonight on the Blackstone griddle. It's my favorite night of the week. So there we go. We're done. See ya.